let's just start. For what is purpose? What is a purpose-driven business? Because on the surface, it sounds very marketing-esque, but it's actually quite deeper than that.
You're absolutely right, Mimi. And the reason it sounds marketing-esque is because a lot of companies are actually using it to market themselves. But I think having this conversation is an opportunity to really dig down and simplify and clarify what it is. So I'm going to share my view, and I would love to hear from others here whether it resonates and what they think as well, especially relative to the alphabet soup that emerges when we talk about ESG and compliance and reporting versus action. I think purpose can really be something that cuts through all of that. In very simple, basic terms, I think a purpose-driven company is a company that wants to do well financially, but also have a wider positive impact on the world. If a company's mission or vision is, here's where we want to get and here's how we want to get there, its purpose is a why. Why should this business exist? And I'll give you a couple of examples. Lego, for example, does not say that it wants to be the world's largest toy maker. It says that it wants to inspire the builders of tomorrow. Or a Unilever does not say that we want to be the biggest FMCG company in the world. They say that we want to make sustainable living commonplace. Or a Patagonia is not saying we want to be the largest clothes retailer in the world, but we are in business to save our home planet. Patagonia is an excellent example of a purpose-driven company, and even they are on this journey. So this journey is not easy. It's very broad, it's very ambitious, it's not easy, but there are companies that are genuinely and authentically recognizing what their purpose is and how they want to then deliver it. Rosewood, we also have, after a lot of soul-searching and internal conversations, we have our own purpose, which is that we want to create a future where people and place enrich one another. And if you're familiar with hospitality at all, maybe that makes sense to you, because hospitality hotels are community builders. It's where people come together, or it's where people come for experiences and learning and awareness and enrichment. They're hubs. Hotels are hubs for local economies, whether it's through hiring or sourcing or partnerships or generating income and business for local farmers, artists, craftspeople. So we see ourselves as being a platform for enrichment for people and place. And that's the journey that we are on.
Thank you. And it's interesting when you talk about that as community builders and put that in the context of tourism. Why do we travel? We want to experience things that are different from what we know. We want to meet new people and try new foods and interact with new cultures, right? And so it is like integral to that community building aspect and enrichment aspect of tourism that I think a lot of us love, especially now with tourism and travel being actually made easier. But back to this idea of purpose-driven business and actually wearing purpose as your ethos, wearing that ethos on your sleeve. How do you shift this idea of purpose and values out of the CSR bucket, where I think traditionally it's been put into, or like surface level marketing angle, or kind of like fluff, right? And how do you integrate that vertically into a company's operations and brand?
I think that's an excellent question. And that is where companies that are on this journey authentically can really be separated from companies that are maybe just starting this journey or trying to figure out what this means or think that this is trendy and therefore this is the thing to do. And when I was thinking about this, what's the process? Because from the examples I've given, including Rosewood, you would have noticed that our purpose is very different from each other. We don't have the same purpose. Lego's purpose is very different from Unilever's. It's very different from Rosewood's. And the path to bringing that purpose to life and to really living the principles and the values behind that is also different. So when you raised this question, I was thinking, what's the general framework? How do I generalize this?
Yeah, what's the easy way that companies here can just say, okay, plug and play? Is there
more alphabets in there, A, B, C, D, W, X, Y. I think it's, again, quite simple. Simple to grasp, not that simple to do. And I think bringing purpose to life and truly doing it starts with action, number one. It has to be ambitious. That's the second. There has to be education around it. That's the third. The fourth is measurement. It's not enough to be doing. It's not enough to be aspiring. It's not enough to be educating. What is happening? What's the progress? So there's measurement. And that can include incentives, KPIs, consequences, etc. And the final part, which I think a lot of companies or a lot of actors might want to jump to first, is communication. It is important to share, to tell the story, not just to share that this is possible and that a global brand like ours, for example, is on this journey when we don't see that many other luxury players or hospitality players being on this journey. And by the way, I will tell you, if you go to our website, you will not see much communication around this. But we're trying to change that because we have action, ambition, education. We've made enough progress there that we feel comfortable now. We should be communicating. Not just communicating our story, but also to learn from others. Because when I share these stories, and I hope this happens in this room, some of you might come up to me and share how your companies or your investment funds or your capital strategy is also purpose-driven. So we learn through this as well. But I want to make this a bit more tangible. What does this mean in the Rosewood context? If you're interested, I can walk you through how Patagonia or Unilever bring it to life, but we'll save that for later. How do we bring it to life? So for action, and this is where a connection to today's theme is very critical, we have to start with a baseline and a strong foundation of sustainability or ESG, or call it what you will. We cannot claim to be a purpose-driven business if we are not careful with how we are consuming energy or water, what we're doing with our waste, how we are growing, how we are managing our presence in a place. So it has to start with that. And at Rosewood, we have this group-wide, living, evolving roadmap that we call Rosewood Impacts. And it has, I'll give you just a couple of illustrations of how it brings it to life. One of the programs under this is called Opportunity Employment. And this is not about just hiring from local communities. Hotels can and should be hiring from local communities, and we do. But it's about every hotel looking around the neighboring community, identifying who are the most underserved groups in that community, and then working with either local government or nonprofit partners to reach out to those groups and bring them in to hotels' recruitment. Around 10% of the people that work at New World Saigon actually qualify as opportunity employment hires. At Rosewood, Sao Paulo, the underserved group that they're focusing on are single parents that live in favelas. Or in Phnom Penh, it's a lot of young people who are growing up in orphanages or going to NGO schools. And in each of our jurisdictions, across 20 countries, 21 countries now, hotels have to do this work and bring in people from underserved groups into our hotel ecosystem so that we become a reflection of the society that we are in and not just a presence there. Another program is the work that we're doing around how are we sourcing? How do we bring in an enrichment lens to who we partner with? So let's go local. Let's look for local farmers, local artists, local craftspeople, local artisans. At Caruso's in Miramar Beach in Santa Barbara in the US, for example, every single item is sourced within a 15-mile radius. Or at Takai at Rosewood Phuket, not only are the people who work there local, the ingredients are local, the sourcing is local, the empowerment of the local community, whether they are farmers or suppliers or workers, is what drives that ethos of that restaurant. And then finally, there's a commitment to education and upskilling. For example, a community school in Rosewood, Mayacoba in Mexico, where guests and staff have basically built that school up, brick by brick, from kindergarten to high school, and it's serving the community and also the hotel staff. So these are the kinds of channels that we're working on under Rosewood Impacts. There's one more that I just want to share, which is the ambition part. So this is great, but this for us is foundation. This has to be streamlined and baselined across the whole group. how do we bring ambition to life? We have these cohort of hotels called Impact Trailblazers, and in fact, New World Saigon is one of them. These are hotels that voluntarily, okay, sometimes there's a little bit of arm twisting, but New World Saigon, there was no arm twisting, it was very voluntary, voluntarily agree to meet more ambitious goals than the group-wide goals, and they voluntarily agree to innovate and experiment. So for example, New World Saigon is going to be trying to offer zero waste or carbon neutral events and meals. So that's an innovation that trailblazers are bringing into our group. And the other ambitious kind of cohort of actions that we have is around restaurants and how restaurants can lead the way in becoming purpose-driven businesses by whether it is through the kind of local sourcing and local partnerships and employment that Takai does, or Blue House in Rosewood, Hong Kong, which is setting aside part of its revenue to hire locally and to upskill and to bring people in to the restaurant ecosystem that would otherwise be excluded from it. So I'll stop there. There's a lot more that I can share, but I'll stop there.
No, I mean, I think this is a really great peek into this world of tourism and hospitality and the ways that this industry is trying to operate better as a business, as an employer, as a member of this community. But, for example, it's one thing to say, okay, from our leaders, we have these values, but getting other partners on board, whether it's the cohort hotels, as you mentioned, maybe a little bit arm twisting. What are the incentives? Are there incentives? Or is it just is there an award at the end? How do you bring these partners on board? Knowing that, yes, in the beginning there might have to be a little bit of the arm twisting, but for the most part, I think that if you have positive incentivization and people come on board willingly, it makes things a lot easier and more successful. But how do you incentivize your hotel cohort to join, your hotels to join this cohort?
By it making business sense. Okay. So I think we expand, or rather we clarify what a healthy business looks like and what it needs to deliver. So in a hotel's context, for example, if a healthy business is one that attracts events and people to come and stay there and people to come and eat at its restaurants, then all the work that is happening behind the scenes goes towards enriching those offerings and those products. And that's where purpose helps. It helps deliver something that is more distinct, that is more unique, that is more meaningful. Because consumer preferences are changing. And not only are they changing, as the title of this conversation is, we're living through turbulent times. So what is going to anchor us in these turbulent times is knowing that the way we as consumers now are acting, behaving, consuming, engaging is somehow good for us, but also it's not bad for the world. I think that consciousness is really stronger now. And so when I speak to hotel leaders like Nicholas here and others, I don't have to make the argument as much as share this, and actually everything clicks into place because they are also observing this and seeing it on the front line. So it's not something alien. And in fact, I would argue, if a company's purpose is something alien or just something that doesn't connect to that business, it will not succeed. It has to connect to the business.
Does that play into the inauthenticity that consumers feel? The lack of a purpose? Is that something that you think influences that?
I think consumers have become very savvy and they have become very good at sniffing out inauthenticity, not just with purpose, but even with marketing claims. And especially in the sustainability space with greenwashing. Thanks to social media, thanks to all of us being connected to news and information and even misinformation all the time, companies have to be very careful with what they're saying. But as long as they are saying it based on evidence, action, proof, or intention, I think consumers have a lot of empathy and understanding for that messaging. But if we're out there to prevaricate, if we're out there to burnish something and just amplify it when at its core it's not solid enough, consumers will sniff that out. So I think consumers are very smart, and companies will do well to remember that.
I hope so. I wanted to go back a little bit to when we were talking about presenting the business case, make it clear the criteria to what makes a healthy business, at least in Rosewood Hotels, as a way to get participation by your hotels to be trailblazers. But, you know, in times of turbulence and crises and incoming global recession, who knows, tomorrow maybe, how do you justify business strategies that feed into this purpose when investors and shareholders are mainly concerned about bottom line and cost cutting and may not view all of this as necessary or might be penalized for it? You know, I've seen so many since the Trump administration took over, so many businesses say, oh, well, ESG is out. And we know that the big ones, the banks and the retail stores who are like, oops, they either use the executive order as their excuse to, ditch the DEI, ESG, sustainability programs, or some double down. So how do you present this to your owners, your shareholders, and say, this is worth fighting for, this is worth continuing to invest our money in, and, ESG is not on its way out like we heard today. It's still a thing.
I would ask them the question, how long do you want to be in business for? Do you want to be in business this year? Do you want to be in business till the end of this administration? Or do you actually want to build a business that is thriving 10, 20, 30 years into the future? And I think reminding people of that horizon is critically important. It also is much harder with the way that public capital markets are structured, with quarterly reporting, which, by the way, Unilever as a public company ditched when Paul Pullman became CEO because he wanted to transition the company towards revenue growth in the long term, and it's one of the first things he stopped. So the question is, how long do you want to be in business for? And I think when owners and investors shift their lens to building a thriving business, then the canvas of what needs to happen today and what is viewed as an investment versus a cost becomes different. But it's up to us companies to be able to make that argument and to bring that in. And it's also, I can share so much data by Harvard Business School, Deloitte, all these very credible organizations that have done a ton of research on companies taking sustainable actions and what that means for performance, and actually more recently, a lot on purpose and how companies that are authentically embracing purpose, what does that mean for their performance? And there's studies out there that show that purpose-driven companies tend to have 30% higher levels of innovation, 40% higher levels of employee retention. I mean, that would sound good to any owner or investor.
Why do you think that is? Did the study say?
10 to 20% greater business valuation. Because a company will thrive only as long as it is able to grow, and it can only grow if it is constantly innovating, thinking creatively, keeping its people happy, letting people's minds drive the innovation in that business. And that is where purpose becomes critically important, because it gives people like us who are employees of companies a reason to align our values with that company and then feel like we want to give more to the company than just, a 9-to-5 clock in, clock out kind of job. And I want to share this Deloitte study, which happened, they released it last year. They polled 20,000 Gen Z and millennials across 44 countries. And they asked them, what is the single most important factor you consider when choosing a new job? Any guesses what that was? It's not purpose.
Salary?
Yeah, total rewards. Makes sense, right? Total rewards. What's the second most important factor? Purpose. Whether our purpose aligns with the company's purpose and whether the company has a wider purpose. So these numbers, these studies should be making everyone sit up and take notice. I mean, Gen Z and millennials are the majority, are almost the majority of the workforce already. So talent preferences, employee preferences are changing. Consumer preferences are changing. Consumers are no longer just saying, okay, I want to buy something because it looks good. They're like, I want to buy something. How is that making me feel? And then it's actually, what's the meaning of this thing? And when I'm buying something, what is its impact on me? What is its impact on the world? I can see a lot of people nodding, so I know at some point you've thought of these questions. Okay, not for everything we buy. I'm not there yet either. But we are beginning to change the way that we view consumption. We are beginning to change the way that we view how we spend our time. And the pandemic really accelerated that. Our time, we relearned the value of our time, and we want to give it to a business, a company, a product, a service that makes us feel enriched. I can share a lot more around how investor returns on green investments, green buildings command a premium, or I think someone said earlier in the panel that they feel that companies that are really embracing ESG will trade at higher prices. I agree. I think this will become the default. Are we at the tipping point? Maybe. No one can predict that. It's much easier to identify it after we've crossed it. But the trend and the evidence is unmistakable.
How do you communicate that then? As you said, it's the last part. And oftentimes, I think where companies take a wrong turn, and this leads them into the washing zones, green, pink, whitewashing, and maybe into inauthenticity, is they start with communications first. And the result is other companies that are actually doing really well and have very strategic and plans and identified their purpose are reluctant to articulate that because they don't want also to be viewed as mixing making money with doing good because it taints it somehow. How do you bridge that and communicate and articulate the values and the purpose behind your business to your consumers, your clientele, the audience in a way that is detailed and strategic but also authentic?
I think first of all, we have to challenge this perception of doing good and making money as somehow being at odds with each other, of this being not only a trade-off, but some sort of a moral dilemma, that you can only do good or you can only make money. Purpose-driven businesses have shot that myth.
Do both. It's okay.
You do both. In fact, if you're living your values, then you should make more money off of that because that's your business. That's your business strategy. And then making more money and doing well enables you to live your values even more. And we have examples of businesses, some of which I've shared, that are doing that. So let's not get caught up in this false moral dilemma. Let's do well and do good. And I think that's going to be the kind of company that is surviving 30 years from now. I think that'll be the default. But coming back to communicating, at its core, communication has to be true. Does it feel weird that I have to sit here and say that? It just has to be true. That doesn't mean that you can't say things. There are some things that we have achieved that we will share. There are some things we have not achieved, but we want to, and we will share it with that tone. This is our intention. We're not there yet. And then it's also, communication has to be strategic, so different for different audiences. So when we talk to owners, we have to speak to what the world that they live in, which is the return on investment, and connect this argument to that. It's completely doable. We do it. When we speak to consumers, consumers are focused on product. So the impact, sustainability, ESG aspects have to be woven into the product, and they don't have to be in the consumer's face all the time. Sometimes you just feel there's a lot happening in this hotel that you don't know about that is sustainable, that is impactful, but you're still consuming it. So, choosing what to communicate, when to communicate, how to communicate is something that deserves a lot more attention than it currently gets in the corporate world.
Attention and resources, I think.
Resources, yeah, very hard. But I think in today's information world, communication is key and absolutely deserves resources. Okay.
Thank you, Mavesh. And with that, unfortunately, we are out of time. I feel like we could continue this discussion. We will afterwards. But thank you so much. It was really good food for thought, I think, for the audience, and definitely for myself when it comes to trying to figure out how to develop your purpose-driven strategy in your business, and especially remaining authentic to yourself, to your workers, to your customers, and also to the greater community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.